had my script and I had worked on it for days, and I was on one side of the street on the lot, walking to the interview, and on the other side of the street was Clint. Cancer, and was fighting this thing, and received over 25,000 pieces of hard mail. And like a dummy, I actually thought I was going to answer it all.
In July 1996, Robert Urich received news that changed everything.
Where I stalk a bad guy, and he goes, "Who are you?" And I say, "I'm the Lone Ranger. I'm the Captain Video."
His career shifted overnight. The future became uncertain, and a fight that would define the rest of his life suddenly became his reality. However, what makes this story truly heartbreaking is not just what he went through, it's what happened after. Because the woman who stood beside him, Heather Menzies, would later face a battle of her own, and the ending to their story is far more devastating than most people realize. So what really happened to Robert Urich and his wife? Join us as we uncover the tragic truth behind their final years. Man who starred in more television shows than anyone else. Robert Urich grew up in a small working-class town on the Ohio River. He was the son of John and Cecilia Urich, of Rusin and Slovak heritage, raised in the Byzantine Catholic and Roman Catholic faiths. He graduated from Toronto High School in 1964 and won a football scholarship to Florida State University, where he played center and was a member of the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity. Football gave him the physical presence and the discipline that would later translate naturally to the screen. But it was not the path his life was going to take. His connection to Hollywood came through the most unlikely of routes. While still at FSU, he crossed paths with Burt Reynolds, also an alumnus of the school. Reynolds recognized something in the young man from Ohio, and when Urich came to California looking for a way in, Reynolds let him stay at his home until he found his footing. Reynolds then personally recommended Urich to producer Aaron Spelling for the television series SWAT in 1975. That single introduction changed the trajectory of everything. SWAT ran for one season, but Spelling remembered Urich and came back to him 3 years later for Vega Dollars, the Las Vegas detective series that would become one of the defining roles of his career. As private detective Dan Tana, Urich was smooth, charming, and completely at ease on screen. The show ran on ABC from 1978 to 1981 and turned him into a genuine television star. What followed Vegas was a career that became genuinely historic in its scope. Robert Urich went on to star as the lead in 15 separate television series across his career, a record that stood as the most for any actor in American television history at the time of his death. The list reads like a tour through 3 decades of network television: SWAT, Vega, Soap, Spencer for Hire, American Dreamer, It Had to Be You, The Lazarus Man, and more. He appeared in feature films including Magnum Force, alongside Clint Eastwood and Lonesome Dove, the landmark Western miniseries that became one of the most watched events in television history. He voiced more than 100 episodes of National Geographic Explorer. He made guest appearances on Saturday Night Live. In 2000, he made his Broadway debut as Billy Flynn in Chicago. He was one of the busiest and most beloved actors in American television, and he did it all with a warmth that audiences responded to instinctively. He once said in a speech that on television you cannot hide who you are. He said that people were always coming up to him not to talk about his shows, but about their families, their pets. He believed they came to him because they felt comfortable with him. That was the truth of his appeal. He was not performing warmth, he had it naturally. And the 15 shows that carried his name at the top of the credits for 3 decades were built on that quality more than on anything else. And then in July 1996, everything stopped when a doctor told him what was growing inside his body. The diagnosis that canceled his show and changed his life. In 1996, Robert Urich was starring in The Lazarus Man, a TNT Western about a man who wakes up with no memory of his past. The show had earned good enough ratings to be picked up for a second season. He was at work on a new chapter of a career that showed no signs of slowing down. Then, in July 1996, he announced that he had been diagnosed with synovial sarcoma. The name of it sounds clinical and distant, but what it means in practice is a rare and aggressive cancer that attacks the soft tissue and joints of the body. It is not a common diagnosis. Most oncologists will see very few cases across an entire career. The announcement was immediate and far-reaching. Castle Rock Entertainment, the production company behind The Lazarus Man, canceled the show the moment the news became public. A series that had already been renewed simply stopped existing because its star had been diagnosed with cancer. Urich did not rage against this publicly. He turned his attention to what the diagnosis required and went to work in a different direction entirely. He underwent chemotherapy, radiation treatments, and 2 separate operations in the mid-1990s to combat the disease. He kept working where he could. He hosted Vital Signs, an ABC medical reality series in 1997, which was itself a quiet kind of statement. The man fighting cancer was hosting a show about medicine. He appeared at events. He spoke publicly about his diagnosis in terms that were designed not to ask for sympathy, but to give courage to other people who were sitting in the same kind of doctor's office he had sat in. He and Heather, who had been his wife since 1975, founded the Heather and Robert Urich Fund for Sarcoma Research at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center. The fund was not something they built after the crisis was over. They built it while he was still sick, while the outcome was still genuinely uncertain. He received the John Wayne Cancer Institute Award for his advocacy work. He received the Gilda Radner Courage Award. He donated the entire $125,000 he won when he appeared on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to the University of Michigan Cancer Fund. Every dollar of a game show prize went directly into research for the disease that was trying to kill him. His public advocacy was not a performance. He gave a speech in Wisconsin in 2001 that has been quoted many times since, in which he said, "Charge forward with hope and get the best medical advice you can. Talk to your friends, neighbors, family, and together you attack it. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always control how we react to it." Those words came from a man who was living them, not describing them. He had lost a television show to cancer, had 2 surgeries, gone through chemotherapy and radiation, and was still standing in front of audiences telling them not to give up. The combination of his professional warmth and his personal courage during those years generated a specific kind of public love that went beyond anything a good performance in a good show could have produced. People felt that he was genuinely one of them. In 1998, 2 years after the diagnosis, he was declared cancer-free. The treatment had worked. The operations had done what they were supposed to do. He returned to television as the captain on a revival of the Love Boat called Love Boat. The next wave on UPN. He appeared in made-for-television movies. In 2000, he walked onto a Broadway stage as Billy Flynn in Chicago, which is one of the more demanding roles in American musical theater. And he did it 6 years after 15 television shows, and in the middle of the same decade that had produced his cancer diagnosis. He was 53 years old, and he was making his Broadway debut. It looked like he had beaten it completely and was about to enter the best chapter of his career. But in the autumn of 2001, the synovial sarcoma returned. And this time, there was nothing left to throw at it. The final days. In 2001, Robert Urich was playing a supporting role in Emerald, an NBC sitcom built around celebrity chef Emeril Lagasse. He was still working, he was still showing up, he was making television, and then in the autumn of that year, The cancer that he had beaten 3 years earlier came back into his body. The synovial sarcoma had returned, and this time the treatments that had worked before had no clear path forward. His family and his medical team worked through whatever options existed. None of them held. A week before he died, he was hospitalized at Los Robles Hospital and Medical Center in Thousand Oaks, California, with respiratory complications. His body was failing. On April 16, 2002, Robert Urich died. He was 55 years old. His wife and his 3 children were in the room with him when he died. His publicist, Cindy Guagenti, released a statement confirming that he had passed after a long and heroic fight. His funeral mass was held 3 days later, on April 19th at St. Charles Borromeo Church in North Hollywood. His body was cremated. His ashes were interred at the family's vacation home in Prince Edward County in Ontario, Canada. A memorial stands nearby in the Westlake Church of Christ Cemetery. The man who had grown up in a small town on the Ohio River and built the most prolific lead actor career in American television history was gone at 55. His mother, Cecilia, who was 90 years old, survived him. She died on October 5, 2002, less than 6 months after her son. The Robert Urich interchange leading to State Route 7 in his hometown of Toronto, Ohio, was named in his honor. The Park City High School in Utah, where he and Heather had helped raise money for the Performing Arts Center, named a space in his memory after he died. His record of 15 television series as lead remains a benchmark that very few actors have approached since. He left behind a body of work that 3 decades of daily commitment had built, and a family that now had to figure out how to carry forward without him. What makes the story of Robert Urich complete is what happened after he was gone. Because Heather Menzies, the woman he had married in 1975 and raised 3 adopted children with, did not retreat from the fight. She walked directly into it. She was going to spend whatever time she had left, making sure cancer never got to do to another family what it had done to hers. But how did she plan to do that? The woman she became. Heather Margaret Brotherston Menzies was born in Toronto, Canada, to Scottish parents who had emigrated after the war. Her father was a struggling artist. By the time she was 14 years old, she had lived in Vancouver, Miami, London, and Southern California. She had a younger sister named Sheila and an older brother named Neil. She was a ballerina before she was an actress. She was 15 years old when someone saw something in her and gave her one of the most famous parts in the history of cinema. In 1965, Heather Menzies was cast as Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. She was 15. The film starred Julie Andrews as Maria and Christopher Plummer as Captain Von Trapp, and it became one of the highest-grossing films ever made at the time of its release. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Louisa was the 3rd oldest of the 7 Von Trapp children, the prankster of the group, always finding ways to make life difficult for the new governess. Heather played her with a natural, unforced energy that fit the role perfectly. She was 15 years old when she filmed it. She spent the rest of her life connected to that film in the way that all of the Von Trapp children were. It followed her everywhere. It defined how strangers first understood her, and she accepted that with genuine warmth and without complaint. She attended anniversary screenings and celebrations for the film for the rest of her life, and the Rogers and Hammerstein organization described her, after her death, as someone who was always hoping for the next gathering. After The Sound of Music, she worked consistently across film and television for the following 2 decades. She appeared in Hawaii, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, Piranha, and Endangered Species. She had a starring role as Jessica Six in Logan's Run, the science fiction television series that ran in 1977. She appeared in Dragnet, Bonanza, Marcus Welby, M.D., The Bob Newhart Show, and dozens of other series. She was a working actress with a career that extended well beyond the film that had made her famous at 15. She was also, from 1975 onward, Robert Urich's wife. She also appeared in episodes of Spencer for Hire, the show her husband starred in, which placed her inside the professional world he had built and gave her a connection to that part of his career that was personal as well as professional. The two of them were genuinely embedded in each other's lives in ways that went beyond the domestic. They shared a professional community, a creative world, and a set of friendships built across decades of working in the same industry. When he got sick, the people around them were not strangers. They were colleagues who had worked beside both of them for years. That community showed up when it mattered. They had met while filming a television commercial for Libby's corned beef hash sometime in the early to mid-1970s. That is the specific and wonderfully unglamorous origin of one of Hollywood's most enduring marriages. A corned beef hash commercial brought them together, and they stayed together until April 16, 2002, which was the day he died. They adopted 3 children: Ryan, Emily, and Allison. They built a life that was full and real and rooted in something deeper than the work. And when the work stopped and the cancer started, they faced it side by side with the same commitment they had brought to everything else. A corned beef hash commercial brought them together. Cancer took him away. And what Heather did with the years she had left after April 16, 2002, is one of the most quietly powerful stories in the history of people who chose to do something meaningful with their grief. The awful ending on Christmas Eve. After Robert Urich died in April 2002, Heather made a public vow that she kept for the remaining 15 years of her life. She wrote about it on the Robert Urich Foundation website, and she said it in interviews, and she lived it every single day. She wrote, "After my husband lost his battle on April 16, 2002, I vowed that I would make it my life's mission to continue to fight for his dream and vision. A world where the word cancer is simply a memory of war we have won." She founded the Robert Urich Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to funding cancer research and support for cancer patients, and she poured herself into it completely. The foundation raised money across multiple events and campaigns over more than a decade. Heather appeared at screenings and retrospectives of The Sound of Music, connecting the film that had made her famous at 15 to the cause that had become the center of her adult life. She spoke at cancer awareness events. She attended fundraisers. She was a recognizable face connected to one of the most beloved films in history. And she used that recognition entirely in service of the foundation her dead husband had helped inspire. She described her mission in terms that left no room for ambiguity. She was going to fight until cancer was a memory. For 15 years, she did exactly that. In November 2017, Heather Menzies was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. The diagnosis was sudden and devastating. She had been in good health. She had been working. She had been showing up at events and speaking publicly and running the foundation. And then, in the space of a few weeks, everything changed. Her son Ryan later told the press that she had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and that nearly 4 weeks after that diagnosis, she died. She died on December 24, 2017. Christmas Eve, surrounded by her children and family members. She was just 68 years old. Her son Ryan's statement afterward described her as an actress, a ballerina, and someone who loved living life to the fullest. He said she was not in any pain. He said that at 7:22 p.m. on Christmas Eve, she had enough and took her last breath on this earth. That sentence, quietly and precisely worded, is one of the most honest pieces of writing about a person's final moments that you will find in any official statement about anyone. She had enough, and she went. The Rogers and Hammerstein organization released a statement that said Heather was part of the family. There really is no other way to describe the members of the cast of The Sound of Music. They said she was a cheerful and positive member of the group, always hoping for the next gathering. They said she would happily live on in that beautiful movie. What the two of them left behind is a legacy that can never be broken or tampered with. Which Robert Urich show meant the most to you growing up? And did you know Heather's full story before watching this? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.